each of them are going to have components of, health and fitness and help improve our longevity and how our bodies work and stuff. But racket sports specifically, they're a multi-component activity. They also have a component of cognitive. You have to be thinking about where the ball is coming and where you're going to place it.
That is the hardest part of it. Yeah.
Right. There's just so much involved beyond just the physical aspect. The social side is huge for older people.
Can't play tennis by yourself.
Right. Up against a wall, but it's not nearly as much fun.
No. Yeah.
So you have that social side, which builds community and, gets people together more, and just all of that kind of fits together with increasing the lifespan. It's not just lengthening life for the sake of lengthening life. It's about the quality of life that people have.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of At Home with Emily, a podcast about creating a life you love. I'm your host, Emily Wood, and today we are starting a brand new series about long life. What is the secret to a long and healthy life? How do we try to avoid things like dementia? Is that possible? How do we keep ourselves and loved ones out of the nursing home if we can? And I'm so excited. We have an expert in all of these things with us today, Dr. Stacy Goddard from Missouri State University. Dr. Goddard, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I know this is your passion.
It is.
And this is what you study. This is what you research. And the reason I reached out to you initially was because of the study that came out of Copenhagen, the Copenhagen city study, where we saw them following nearly 9,000 people for 25 years in the later years of life. And looking at how are these folks living? What are they involved in? What activities are they doing specifically as far as exercise goes? And so I think we all know, the better that we eat and the more that we move, the better for us. But seeing them break it down into these specific sports and specifically studying those was really eye-opening for a lot of us. And so when we looked at those numbers, they had sports such as tennis and racket sports in there. They had swimming. They had, social group exercise, all of these different things. And so all of us are wondering, well, what does it say? What was shocking to many of us was to see that playing one specific sport could increase your lifespan. They believe it does by nearly a decade, 9.7 years to be exact.
Right.
So everyone, what sport is this? Is this running? Is this CrossFit? It was tennis.
Yes.
And when I said that to you, I'm like, isn't that shocking? And you said, no, not at all.
Right.
Because, you live in this, you study this, but why is that not surprising for you?
Well, I think when you look at all the different sports, each of them are going to have components of, health and fitness and help improve our longevity and how our bodies work and stuff. But racket sports specifically, they're a multi-component activity, meaning they're going to work your cardiovascular system. They're going to work your muscular system. And those things combined work on your skeletal system. They also have a component of cognitive. You have to be thinking about where the ball is coming and where you're going to place it.
That is the hardest part of it.
Right. There's just so much involved beyond just the physical aspect. The social side is huge for older people.
Can't play tennis by yourself.
Right. Up against a wall, but it's not nearly as much fun.
No. Yeah.
So you have that social side, which builds community and, gets people together more, and just all of that kind of fits together with increasing the lifespan. And what I research, or what I like to look at, and most people do, is it's not just lengthening life for the sake of lengthening life. It's about the quality of life that people have.
Yeah. Can you still do the things that you enjoy? Can you spend time with friends and family? No one likes to think of their future, although there are many great facilities, but being in a facility.
Right.
I think it's everyone's goal, or most everyone's goal, is to be able to be independent and live with family as long as you can.
Right.
And when we look at tennis, something that you said that caught my attention when we were speaking earlier was the hand-eye coordination, which I struggle with greatly. I really do, but I do play tennis. I do love it. But what is it about that hand-eye coordination with how the brain works?
So if you think about like development over the lifespan, when kids are young and they're learning to walk, there's a whole big process that's happening in the brain with those neurological pathways coordinating muscle movement. So your brain tells your muscles exactly how to contract to get the wanted movement of that. And when you're doing hand-eye coordination, it's just building those neurological pathways. And if you've heard of something called muscle memory, that's the idea. Like you just build that pathway, you make your action, and then the brain evaluates. You basically get feedback. Did that work the way I wanted it to?
Never does.
And then you adjust. Right.
Yeah.
But over time, you learn, exactly.
Okay, that was a
how
good
to
shot.
do it.
Yeah, that went where I wanted it to on the court when I was serving.
And as you keep doing that, and this comes with this, practice. As people continue to practice their skill, that pathway becomes more embedded. And so the easy route, that's the neurological route. And so your muscles do that movement. That's a lot of thought process that is really good for older adults because we do get cognitive decline. And I'm sure you've heard all the different things about dementia and Alzheimer's, and ways to prevent that is using your brain, doing different types of crossword puzzles, stuff like that. But physical activity, especially things that work hand-eye coordination, that have strategy involved, those are all still cognitive. But now you're combining two parts of your brain. You're having the thinking part of, where am I going to place that ball? What's the trajectory of that ball coming towards me, and how do I get to it? And then the physical side of having to move, so there's a lot
before it goes by you. Okay, so when we're talking racket sports, obviously tennis is far and above. So they studied multiple sports, and we'll go through that list here in just a second, but far and above. I mean, a decade of quality life. That's huge just for tennis. But the next item on the list as far as the sports ranking was actually badminton at 6.7 years. And you don't think of that as nearly as physical, I wouldn't think, as tennis. But is it still that same story there with the hand-eye and all of that you were talking about?
Right. And so you're going to have a lot of the same concepts, but like you said, it's not quite as physical. So some of the benefits that people are going to be getting from tennis is that higher intensity, the short, quick movements, you have to move lateral, which you do in badminton as well, but it's not quite as fast. So I think some of those. But still
very high. I mean, 6+ years.
Right.
What about the new sport that is everyone's trying, which is pickleball? Right. Which I'm also equally terrible at. It seems kind of silly. I mean, it doesn't seem like it has, the same physical demands as a game like tennis. However, are you thinking we're going to see the benefits with that sport as well? Is that something, for people to try? And
absolutely. And it's a little bit easier to begin to learn how to play pickleball rather than tennis because the court is smaller. You don't have quite as much, range that you have to get to the ball, especially if you're playing singles and that kind of thing. But absolutely, it's going to have the same benefits that tennis will. So,
that's
and
amazing.
It's super fun. I mean, people love it. So there's all kines of tournaments
people who
all
win
over
it
the
love
place.
it. No. Right. I never win at pickleball. All right, so let's look at the list because I wrote down what the Copenhagen City Heart Study found. We know that tennis was 9.7 years, and that's amazing to a lot of people. Not as much to yourself. It fit right into what you've seen. Badminton was over 6 years. Soccer was 4.7. I don't see a lot of senior citizens playing soccer, but I guess they do in other parts of the world.
I'm thinking yes, in other parts of the world, not so much here.
Maybe they have leagues, senior leagues, and things like that.
And there's masters level sports and stuff where they do. I mean, we have masters level sports here too, but yeah, in other countries where soccer is a little bit more popular,
they continue playing it. And then everything else, we go under that 5-year mark. So cycling came in at 3.7. Swim was 3.4. Jogging, 3.2 years. Calisthenics, 3.1. And health club, just 1.5, but still, a year and a half there. What I was thinking, just reading this and just speaking with you a little bit, is when we see the cycling and the swim and the jogging, those could more likely be done solo, right? You don't have to have it. You can have a running club, but you can also do it by yourself. Do you think that's a component of it there, the social element of it?
Yes. For the longevity part, there could be several variables in there. If you think about swimming and cycling, those are non-weight bearing sports.
Okay.
So you kind of lose the benefit of like bone density,
the skeletal that you were talking about,
maintenance and stuff that potentially could have a little bit. You're also not getting as much agility in that.
Okay.
So like if somebody does fall and their bone density has gone down, they're more likely to break bones, which obviously is going to shorten lifespan, especially as we get older with that. So there could be some of those components in it, but definitely social can be one, especially if they're doing it alone. Now, we do have cycling clubs, where people go on rides together, and so you can have it that way as well. But
so is a big take home from you looking at this the importance of social connection? Do you think that's part of it when we're talking about these studies and the exercise and aging?
Yes, and that's one thing that we really need to push. Like when they called it a double pandemic for older adults during COVID. And the isolation, because isolation is devastating for anyone. But as we get older and, your kids move away and, all the life changes that can happen when older adults end up, by themselves without having those outside social connections, it's really hard. And it really does, just the whole mental side of it's easier to become depressed and, all those things. So having that other community, whether it's exercise or anything that gets older adults out and with people,
active.
Definitely is going to help them.
And I'm seeing that. I mean, we have community centers in town where you see large groups of older adults doing exercise together, playing pickleball together. Does it need to be a certain number of times per week, per month? Can it just be, I dust off that tennis racket, once a month? Or are we seeing that this is something that has to be on a consistent basis?
Depends on what you're talking about. So if we're talking about the physical side, it needs to be more consistent to get a lot of those benefits. We always say something is better than nothing. So if, even if it's once or twice a week, you're going to get some benefit out of it. Now, there is the ideal that we would, say if you go with like the physical activity guidelines, we want everybody to be at least 150 minutes a week. And that's not all at once. That's spread out over the week.
Sure.
So, yeah, I guess it kind of depends on what component of health and fitness that we're referring to. But definitely the more the better to a point.
Right.
There is a top end where you can kind of overdo in some instances.
But you do see people in their 60s who are extremely vibrant and healthy, and even 70s and even into their 80s now.
Oh, yeah. So I know we talked a little bit about every year in the summer, I help put on the senior games here in town. And they have several sports for the senior games, but the part that I work with is the track and field. And we'll have people in their 90s out there competing, doing various different events. We offer a lot
in the
of
track and
events.
field.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We have long jump and triple jump and sprints and distance
still doing
runs, high jump. Yep. And they're still out there doing it. So
wow.
So yeah.
And so part of it too is finding something that you can enjoy.
Yes. And that's really probably number one, because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to stay consistent or continue with it. But definitely finding something that you like is number one. But which I think is why a lot of people do like the tennis and the pickleball and all that, because it's fun to play, but half the battle is of doing exercise, I think, is having somebody there to do it with.
Yes.
So
we all know we should be doing these things. But when you look at it from a physiological standpoint, what are the takeaways in terms of what these exercises really do for the body? It's not just, I think we all think about weight loss, weight gain, things like that, being strong, not being as strong. But what do you really see in the body for these type of activities?
I think the main thing is we know there's going to be decline in the body as we get older. Processes slow down. It's really about sustaining as long as we can those processes. Even if they slow down, they're not going to slow down as much as they would with somebody who's not doing it. So improving the cardiovascular system, that's obviously going to be one of our big things. So decreasing blood pressure or just improving the ability of the cardiovascular system so that you can go do the things you want without being overtaxed to do them. So when we talk about living alone, that's a huge thing for older adults to be able to take care of themselves. And which then brings in the cognitive part, that you have to be able to cook for yourself. You have to be able, if you are taking medications, that you can take those when you're supposed to and not get them mixed up and, all those things. And physical activity is the number one thing that can help sustain people's ability to do those things. The other thing we haven't talked about is the chronic disease that we have. And we do have a big problem in the United States with chronic disease, whether it's diabetes or cardiovascular disease or even arthritis is a chronic disease. But again, if somebody has that, doing physical activity helps alleviate a lot of those symptoms. So for example, somebody with diabetes, it makes their body use the sugar in their blood better when they become active or when they exercise. So even when there is one of those issues, it helps with that and makes it really less severe.
I would say even can inhibit future growth and development of some of those chronic diseases.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, of not, like I said earlier, not so much the longevity, but the quality of life and being able to do the things you want to do as long as you can. And that, playing things like tennis and pickleball and, whatever you enjoy that gets you up and moving and active, you're going to get some health benefits from that.
I would say, too, that you don't have to know how to do these things to get started in them, and you don't have to be young to get started in them. I started in racket sports after my kids started playing, and I had no idea how to help them or feed them a ball or hold a racket, and I just showed up one day and started taking lessons. And went into a beginner class and did terrible. But there was something exciting about learning something new.
Yes.
And putting yourself back out there. And I think no matter what phase that you're in life, you can gain that. So the other thing that I do want to hit on with you, if you can stay for another episode, hopefully, or come back for an episode, is the fact that we also have a flip side of the research out there that is showing that sadly, life expectancy is actually decreasing. First time in a long time that we're going backwards.
Right.
And I think that could surprise people. I mean, we feel like we've made all these advancements in medicine and we have all of this information, but the life expectancy is actually going to be on the decline. Isn't that how it's projected to look right now?
Right. So when they project out, and it's based on things like chronic disease, you're right, we've made tons of advancements in medical technology and being able to treat and early diagnosis and all those things. But we are seeing so many chronic diseases that now it's projecting that because people are getting these chronic diseases earlier in life than they used to, most likely we're going to see our longevity either not advance like it has been or actually start to come backwards. So not a good thing at all.
No.
And this is where, in my field with, exercise and stuff, you're right, you can start at any age. The body will adapt to the stress that you put on it. So at whatever age you decided you want to start pick up a new sport. That's great. But we also want to get the younger people active now.
Right.
Start those lifetime patterns and prevent some of those chronic diseases for much later on in life or avoid them altogether.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today for this episode of At Home with Emily, a podcast about creating a life you love. Please be sure to join us next time because we will have a well-known senior citizen tennis Hall of Famer in the house talking about how these statistics have certainly proven to be true in her life, and she is inspirational for so many. We'll see you next time.